So with that, I am going to hand it over to Julie.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flinchbaugh's Orchard. I love when people can be in person here at our farm. But today, you're probably happy you're sitting at home and inside your home and looking through a computer because I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little sweltering warm out here. But greetings from York, Pennsylvania. If you have been to Flinchbaugh's before, thanks for visiting. If you haven't and you're traveling through the area or you live close by, stop in and say hello. Always ask to see me. I love to say hello to people. Elena is behind the camera today, so thanks to her for volunteering to stand out here with me and chat with you guys. I just wanted to give you a little history about Flinchbaugh's. Now, I know you guys are learning a lot about how agriculture is, it's very wide, it's very diverse. And that's something that is very evident here at our farm as well. It's very diverse. So we farm about 2,200 acres of ground. And in that 2,200 acres, it includes corn, soybeans, wheat, and some hay. Green beans. So we're growing commercial green beans. So 275 acres of green beans for canneries. We're grazing also orchard, fruit crops, stone fruits, apples, pears, plums, nectarines, apricots. I know I'm missing a few in there. We also grow fall crops. So you're thinking your pumpkins, your ornamental gourds, your Indian corns, all those types of things. And then we have a farm market. So we direct market our products and a lot of other local products to the consumer directly through our farm market here on site in Hellam. And then with that, we have ventured into the realm of what we've heard of agritourism. And I don't know if you've heard that term before or if you visited any other locations so far this summer for agritourism, but we're talking about corn mazes, pick your own, festivals, picnics in the peaches, just events that really get people out to the farm to enjoy and experience the farm. And that is a version of tourism, so agritourism. So we're a little diverse in that sense. We also, if you were here, would be smelling something right now, is because we raise hogs. So we raise hogs from about 75 pounds. They come into us 50 to 75, and then we send them to Hatfield or Smithfield for butchering. They go out here about 250 to 275 pounds. So we're raising the end of the hog. We also have a fresh and dried processing business for apples. So we're peeling and coring apples in a large peeler, I guess you could say. And we're selling them to other bakeries or other restaurants that are utilizing them for pies, for dumplings, for special sauces made with apples. And then we're drying apples too. So think about dried apples or something we've called locally snits. It is become a very popular item because of its health food option. And with that, we are out in the orchard. So my brothers, Michael and Andrew, are my two older brothers, and my parents, Richie and Sonia, the five of us make up this family business. But it's not just the five of us that make this work. It's about 40 employees throughout the year that actually make it run around in circles. So it is a growing but small business in York County, and we're grateful to be here in our community. But one of the things we love is talking to everyone out there, no matter if they're a neighbor across the field or if they are from California and they're from another country, is us sharing our story and telling people what we do, how we grow the food that people are eating on their plates. Whether they bought it from us or not, we like to give the option of sharing our story. So it was mentioned we love questions. I love questions. And I don't think any question is a silly question. To me, I don't know much about teaching, but I do know about the farm. And I don't know much about being a doctor, but I do know about the farm. So the more we learn about other vocations and industries in our world, the better we are. So please feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to have them. Now, shall we get down to the fun stuff? That's just a little bit of a history. But we're standing in the orchard, and I'm going to start with a poll, a question right off the bat to get you guys thinking. All right, if you want to come on in real quick here, Elena, zoom in on this. And I want you guys to tell me what type of fruit that is. Now, it's immature. It's not ready to harvest yet. All right. But this is on is it a peach? Is it a nectarine? An apricot? Or I forget what the last poll is that I said.
Plum.
What was a plum? Well, now you know it's not a plum because I couldn't remember what the fourth option was. You could go back in the shade. We're trying to keep the camera in the shade so it keeps cool and we don't overheat it out here, let alone ourselves. So are we getting some responses back? Is it a peach, a nectarine, apricot, or a plum? Remember, our plum's out. That's your freebie.
We have a couple people finishing up. We have
Sure.
55% saying peach, 29% nectarine, 16% apple.
And no one's saying plum. Yay, they're listening. Yay. So that's awesome. The majority of you have guessed correctly. And if you, I'm going to pull out an actual one here. We'll keep Lena and the camera in the shade. But right here is a mature peach. Yes, we actually started picking on Monday. Yesterday was our first day of picking peaches. So our peach season runs from the end of June through typically the end of September. So most people say, whoa, nuh-uh, peach season is July and August. Well, I'm here to tell you that was a few years ago. A few years ago, we grew about 6 to 7 types of peaches, varieties of peaches. But just like have millions of varieties of apples, peaches have lots of different varieties too. We actually grow 26 varieties of peaches. And each peach is in season for about 2 weeks. So in that 2 weeks time, we might have 2 or 3 different varieties, but then they go out of season and then next ones come in. So we've been able to extend this lovely peach season a lot longer because of varieties. So right here, right now, I have 2 varieties that we're picking, and you might not be able to tell the difference, but this here is a yellow peach. This is a white peach. And if you look at the undertone, it's kind of whitish in there. If you look under the tone here, it's yellow. Now, these peaches we started picking, and you can see the trees behind me. Those are not ready for harvest yet. But if you look at this tree, it's pretty big for a peach tree. And these trees are actually fairly old, okay? These trees are actually about 25 years old. Now, in the peach world, in peach tree world, that's kind of ancient. There's kind of a senior citizen, okay? So these trees actually, if you come back next year, this time of year, they won't be here. We will have taken these trees out because they've maxed out their life capacity. And if you see, you're starting to see spots between the trees because we've had some death in the trees because they've started dying off because of their age. So most peach trees live to be about 20 to 22 years. We have good production off them. The reason why we've left ours go longer is when we planted this orchard right here, we are planting it into virgin soil. And what I mean by that is there had been no other fruit trees here in this soil prior. So this soil did not have carry nematodes or carry insects that might have attacked the young roots early on. And because of that, the trees had longer health long term. So we've been able to stretch their health. And you can see these trees are pretty loaded. There's a lot of peaches on here, and it's going to look bad that I'm going to take a peach off. But we actually come through here and thin the fruit off anyways. So those were actually still pretty thick. So this guy's pretty green. He's got a way to go. But we got some ready to eat and ready to enjoy. So you're looking at a 25-year-old tree. We have trees of all different ages here. When I have school kids out here, I like to say we got preschoolers who are 3 years old. We got our middle schoolers who are about 8, 9 years old here too. And then we have the adults who are about in their teens as peach trees. And then we have our seniors. So it's really neat to see that we constantly have a cycle of growth and age of trees in the orchard. Now, the peach orchard is really neat space to see. And I'm going to actually have Elena come in here a little bit because let's talk water. All right. So if we're talking water, we don't have the capability of coming out here with a hose or a bucket whenever we need to irrigate or add water to it. Are you in the shade enough, Elena, you think? I don't know. Sorry, guys. We're just making sure we don't overheat. We heard that yesterday there was an overheating scenario. So we actually use something called drip irrigation. Every row of our orchard, every row of our pumpkin patch, every row of most everything here on our farm has some type of irrigation line lying at the roots. And what you see here is an emitter. This will emit water from it at a slow rate. I believe it's about 1 gallon per every 2 hours. Okay. So this is emitting the water right here at the base of the tree. A tree's root system is as wide as its branches. So we want this water to be going in where the roots are. We don't care if it's in the tractor grass path out there. No offense, grass, but you can stop growing anytime, right? We don't need that to grow. What we need to make sure is getting the water is the root system. So this is drip irrigation. It's emitting a slow rate. We turn this on typically at night, and we will run it as long as we need to, typically 12 to 24 hours, depending on the time. Now, we have actually already turned on the irrigation 3 different times here on the farm already. That's kind of crazy because, summer just started. This past Sunday, right? No, Saturday. Well, one day here this weekend, summer just started and we've already had some dry spells. So we are very careful in utilizing our water. We actually do not have wells. We don't have ponds. We actually are buying our water from New York City. So every gallon of water that comes out here, we're paying some pennies on. So we're not wasting this water. We're making sure it stays, we're using it at appropriate times, okay? So right here, the peach trees, I don't believe these have probably seen much irrigation yet just because they're not at a point of harvest, but areas where we would have needed to harvest, we would have been irrigating. So it's just interesting to see when people think, you irrigate, you might just take a big trough and dump water out. We don't want to waste water. And secondly, we don't want water overhead because fruit doesn't like to be wet. And when fruit's wet, it gets disease on it and it gets rot. And well, let's be honest, I don't like to grow fruit that has that poor of quality. We would prefer that the fruit stays dry. And so if we're putting that water down here at the roots, it's one more benefit to the tree itself. Now, while we're out here also, kind of wanted to mention something else important to us here at the farm. And that's something in how we grow additionally. And we grow additionally something called integrated pest management, IPM, okay? So I'm gonna say IPM, and I'm going to let you think of it as integrated pest management. What does that mean? It means we're using a lot of different methods to control pests being insect, disease, weeds, lots of different pests. Doesn't just necessarily mean insects. It means we're controlling pests and problems on our farm through a threshold level, okay? So we're monitoring at different stages. We're utilizing very low cut grass. This almost to some degree, sometimes out in the orchard, looks like we have a manicured golf course because we keep our grass low. What doesn't like to live in low grass? Bugs. What do we not want in our tree? Bugs. So we keep our grass mowed short. That's a type of integrated pest management program. That's using a mechanical way to keep our crop growing well, okay? So there's one, it's mechanical. Another way is actually called biological. Now you're like, what did you just take out of the tree? Is that twist tie from your bread this morning from breakfast? No, this is actually a twist tie, yes, okay? But it releases a pheromone that disrupts the mating cycle of a specific insect that attacks our trees. Now, what? If you know anything about insects, you know that they have lots of insects in a season. So they're constantly reproducing. So we're constantly having 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, 4 generations, 5 generations of insects, and they're constantly reproducing. And so you might have 1 generation and they don't cause much damage, but because they're reproducing so rapidly, we suddenly have a problem in our orchard. But if we have these guys out here and we have the first generation of them in the orchard, it disrupts their mating cycle so that they don't reproduce again. So this is just a biological thing that releases the pheromone of the insect that confuses them, and we're able to manage it. We don't need to spray our orchard there's 2 or 3 different types of pests actually that we manage in this way. Biological control. Still good? So just one more way. Another method of what we're doing is just monitoring. And out here, it took us a while to find this. I hope you can appreciate, Elaine and I were like scouring the orchards for these because even though it looks kind of big and bold right here, they blend in these trees, believe it or not. So what this is, no, it's not a little, bird house. It actually is a trap. Now this isn't to trap the insects to kill them, but what this is a sticky trap. This little thing poured out stickiness. So this is actually, I don't know, okay? So when the bugs crawl across through here, they stick to it, okay? And each square helps us to monitor and measure how many types of insects we have out in the orchard, whether they're good or whether they're bad. Now we do this once a week. We put new cards in here and so that we're able to monitor. And right now this is looking very good, very clear. Because as you can tell, a lot of these bugs are very small. And if you look at this tree, like, let's be honest, would we find any of these bugs in the tree? No, it would be very, very hard for us to do that. So these traps are for monitoring purposes for us to monitor and determine how many insects, good or bad, are out in the orchard. Now, what is a good insect? I don't have this as a poll, but someone tell me, what is a good insect that we want to keep at the farm? Does anyone have an idea? I'm going to give you a moment to type if you would like to.
We have bees,
Yep,
honeybee, ladybugs,
ladybugs,
spiders.
Yeah. Excellent. So ladybugs are another, is the insect I was thinking of at this point. Ladybugs are super beneficial because they actually eat what we're going to call bad bugs. Let's just keep it simple and call them bad bugs. So they keep the levels of insects down. And this is another biological control, is releasing ladybugs in the orchard to eat levels of eat when you meet a certain threshold of bad bugs. So ladybugs are another opportunity for biological control. So mechanical is just keeping this grass short. Biological is utilizing the pheromone strips or releasing ladybugs. We're going to talk about cultural when we get up to our apple orchard. And of course, there is chemical. Chemical is the very last point that we utilize here on a farm. Why? A, we don't want to have to use it if we don't have to. It's not going to hurt our customers eating the fruit, but it is an expense we don't want to have to utilize. Plus, it's one more trip through this orchard that we have to make. And the less time, the better, usually means we have better quality fruit that we're having in this orchard. So we utilize chemical only when we've maxed out our mechanical methods, our cultural methods, our biological methods, and so forth. So why can people in California and across the West Coast grow crops without organically a lot easier than those of us here on the East Coast? We're going to talk about that when we head up to the next orchard. But I want you to think about that. Growing in Eastern US versus growing in Western US. If you've ever bought organic produce, it's probably said it's been from the California West Coast region, majorly, okay, when you think of the box scale. And we're going to talk about why that is like that. Think about today, think about what doing. I have humidity here in Pennsylvania. If you go to California, typically, now if you go to Pacific Northwest right now, I'm very scared for those people out there growing crops because they're baking right now. We're really concerned for the apple growers out there they're typically experiencing 75 to 80 degree days, and they're experiencing like 100 and 105 degree days. We're a little concerned for those growers out there on the crop, but typically the West Coast does not have humidity. So think about what humidity might do to a fruit crop or to a produce crop versus not having humidity, which basically humidity comes from, we have moisture, we get rain. They don't have moisture, they don't get rain. So we'll talk about that as we move on. Any questions here for me while I'm in the peach orchard before we head for a little walk? I'll just give you a moment to type in. Hopefully I've blown you away and you're like, wow, she's answered everything I never knew I needed to know.
We do have one that says, is this an organic orchard to the extent possible?
It is, absolutely. And those methods that I talked about, biological, mechanical, cultural, and last is chemical. We do have to use chemical primarily for fungicide, disease, and that's what we're going to talk about with the humidity and we have disease that's uncontrollable typically without using some type of chemical for that. But if we can manage for it as best we can, we limit how much we do need to use.
We do have another. Oh, sorry.
No. Go for it.
We have one that says, what about fertilizer?
Yeah. So we do use fertilizer. Are you asking what types of fertilizer, or are you asking if we do utilize fertilizer?
Let's ask both.
Okay.
Types. We clarified.
Sure. So we're typically using a granular fertilizer. Here in the orchard, typically, we're not allowed to really spread animal fertilizer, which we do have because we have hogs. So those are primarily going on our grain crops farm. We actually go through an audit with the USDA to make sure that our crops are grown safely for consumption. So we do wholesale some of our products to grocery stores, and a lot of those companies require an audit. Plus, it's just good for us to have go through that auditing procedure so that we are making sure we're taking good steps to protect the crops that we're growing and growing it in a way that is safe for consumers to eat. And that comes down to what type of light bulbs, non-shattering light bulbs we use in the packing house, to the fertilizers we use in the orchard, to making sure that our employees understand sanitation requirements. So an audit covers a lot of different things to making sure that we're managing for safety and a good quality product going out the door. But we do utilize fertilizer here in the orchard. I don't have the specifics on how often or how much, but nitrogen, NP and K, nitrogen, potassium, good heavens. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. I need to go back to my don't tell my chemistry teacher from Penn State. He'll probably be a little upset with me for my struggle there. My pants nutrition class would probably give me a hard time. Elena's behind the camera. She's at Penn State Mount Alto, so she's giving a little chuckle there. So anyways, I hope I answered your question. If not, ask a follow-up question. I'm happy to answer it. I am going to start walking, but please feel free to toss that question my way. Elena, can you just give me a quick heads up on time?
12:50.
We
Just
do have,
keep you guys, go ahead and shout it out to me as I walk.
so how many types of crops do you grow?
Okay. Good. Very good question. We're gonna wait till we get up here a little farther. Actually, you know what? I can do it. We're gonna actually talk a little bit about that. It's basically what's in my crate here that's gonna help me answer that. So we talked about the corn, soybeans, wheat, and hay. That's actually Elena scans to her left. You can see this is a very small field. This actually field would be planting into blueberries very soon. But right now it's in wheat. So we make sure we don't waste. And if you look to the right, that wheat field will be sunflowers. So we do cut your own sunflowers here as well. Gonna head up this way. I'm gonna answer that question. Forgive me, I'm just gonna walk a little bit here. I'm gonna go up to the very last line.
Okay.
So those big trees can provide you some shade. Does that sound good?
Yep.
This here. So grab a drink of water.
Or stand here.
Let me just cut for you in the shade there. Sit down. Drink of water here quick. Thanks guys for that little break. So yeah, what types of crops do we grow here? So in the orchard, we grow 26 varieties of peaches, 7 varieties of nectarines, 7 varieties of plums, 1 variety of apium, 4 varieties of apricots. I think it's 19 varieties of apples now. What am I missing? Pears, 5 varieties of pears. I know I'm missing something, guys. You have to forget. Did I say plums? Said plums.
Yeah, nectarines.
Nectarines. I think there's 7 varieties of nectarines out there. Yeah. So we grow a lot of different types of crops in the orchard world. As far as in the pumpkins and the fall crops, my brother kind of hates me because I'm in sales, but I get to pick the varieties that we grow because I know what customers are liking. So in the pumpkin and ornamental gourd world, I think I pick out like 22 different types of ornamental gourds a year. Plus we have like 6 or 8 different jack-o'-lanterns or regular pumpkins that we grow. So there's a lot of different things growing around here. We have the commercial green beans. We grow 4 different types of sunflowers. It's a lot of different things growing. We grow tomatoes. We don't grow everything. My dad always said that it's good to be diverse, but what's not good is when you can't grow quality. So don't sacrifice the quality of one crop to grow another. So things we don't grow but sell, and we work with other local growers, just like sweet corns, green beans, zucchini, lopes and honeydew and canaries, melons. We work with different growers for those things specifically. But so our crop here is primarily tree fruits and then grains, corn, soybeans, wheat. It's primarily what we do grow. The sunflowers that we do grow are primarily all for cut your own. We actually don't raise any of that for birdseed. It's primarily just for cut your own. And for our sunflower bloom explosions and stuff like that. So that falls into our agritourism. So hopefully that answers that question. I think I covered it, Elena.
Yeah.
All right, so we're back out in the orchard. Now, Elena, if you could just do a quick slide of the different trees here. So if you look at the trees in front of us, they're very small. If you look down at their trunks, they're planted about 4 feet apart on the row, very close together. Now, if you pan to the right, you're going to look at apple trees too, and you're going to notice, whoa, what a huge difference. And it is different. We can't even show you the full bulk of it. But, you know, one tree trunk is here. The next tree trunk is, I think it's 14 feet away from the next planting. Okay. So why are we growing trees big and small? Well, I'm going to tell you first thing, these are older. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's why they're bigger, but we're going to wait till this truck goes by. Because they are, we've grown a lot and learned a lot of science. Okay, Penn State actually helped us a lot learn more about growing trees. And one of those things we talked about is cultural. We can grow higher quality fruit trees and have bigger yields on smaller acres of land when we plant them small like this. We utilize a rootstock. This variety here is called Crimson Crisp. Excellent eating. If you have never tried Crimson Crisp, I suggest you try it. It's variety Crimson Crisp. But down here at the base, you can see this little knob. This is the scion, okay? We actually cutting from this rootstock Crimson Crisp and planted it to a specific rootstock. And that rootstock is going to inhibit this tree from growing very big. All right. So this tree is going to stay small. It's going to get a little bit bigger than this, but it's going to stay about this size. Now, because of that, we don't have ladders. We don't need a huge ladder to harvest off of here. Airflow. And this goes into that cultural method of integrated pest management program. If we keep small trees, insects do not want to live in there because the air can go right through this tree. If we look at these branches here on those big trees, air can't go straight through there. Sure, it can, but not to the same degree. And an insect is going to build a nest or live in an environment like that tree way more than it's going to live in an environment like this tree. Secondly, fungicides. This is where it comes back to monitoring and managing for not needing fungicides. We have humidity. We have rain, which is a blessing because a lot of people across the world and country that grow crops do not get rain. They have to depend on whatever their state gives them from the channels or from other states around them coming down through. And that's a whole different conversation, and I'm not here to have that discussion. But because we do get rain typically, we have higher levels of disease and rot in our orchard. So we do have to manage that. But if we can keep these trees and this fruit dry, because it can dry off easier because air will flow through here. Again, much more easier through this tree than those apples in the middle of that tree. Those trees over there are not going to dry out nearly as quick. So our trees and our fruit are likely going to have chances of fruit rot a lot easier. So we're growing smaller trees for managing insects, managing disease, managing labor, because again, we don't need a ladder. It's much easier to pick. And we're growing more fruit and higher quality off this. In addition, right now, when I stick my arm out here in the sun, I'm getting a suntan, right? Guess what? Fruit gets a suntan from the sun too. Okay? So apples in the middle of those trees right there, they're shaded. They're not getting the sun. So unfortunately, they're not going to have the beautiful red color that these Crimson Crisp get typically. So we're able to get a better colored apple because they're out in the sunshine a little bit more too. So these trees, even though it seems odd to be growing them so close, it has lots of good reasons. And again, you see that irrigation right there. Okay, this is a little unusual that the apple is actually typically below it. We try to keep branches above that level, but it's not. One thing with this type of planting, these dwarf trees, is because these trees are small and they do grow a lot of fruit. Remember, the roots from these trees are only as wide as the branches. So these roots are very, very, very narrow. And when these trees hang heavy with fruit, this tree would fall over from the weight of it. So what we have to do, and I don't know if you can quite see it, we have to attach wires and posts. If you would drive along this in the middle of spring or winter when you don't see the leaves in the tree, looks like we have a vineyard, but it's not. We've trellised these trees so they have strength, they have stronger system, so we can keep them upright and keep them from falling down and crashing. So that just gives you a little idea of growing apples in today's environment. So again, that goes back to the cultural control and the humidity and the disease that West Coast does not typically have because they don't get rain from the sky. They don't have humidity. So they don't have the same levels of pressure of insects or disease like we do here on the East Coast. So we are growing differently here than they are there. It's amazing how we work together, or we work across the country to still provide fresh fruits and veggies for everyone. Now, I'm gonna actually head up to the next spot, but as we go, if you guys have any questions, shout them out and I will give some answers. Oh, by the way, Crimson Crisp, check them out. Really, really good. If you like Honeycrisp, these are better. If you like Evercrisp, oh, that's tough. Evercrisp, Crimson Crisp, I don't know. I still go with my Jonna Golds versus Evercrisp or Crimson Crisp, but Crimson Crisp are way better than Honeycrisp. We do grow them too, by the way. All right, let's head on up.
Do you have any fruit bowl trees or trees with multiple types of fruit or multiple types of fruit on one trunk?
We do not. That's not very efficient for a commercial grower because that tree needs different types of management then, because most likely those fruits are not coming into season at the same time. So we actually do not grow like that. It's great for the homeowner, but typically one fruit's coming in season while the other fruit's not. So we'd be having to manage that tree differently 2 to 3 times every time. So it's much easier for us to do a whole row of something and manage an orchard for one type of crop in a row versus one tree being this or one tree being that. Great for backyard growers, great for someone having a small orchard, but not super efficient for a commercial orchard like ours.
Makes sense. Do you use crop rotation on the fields?
Absolutely. I'm not going into too much for the crops in the field. No-till is at the heart, and conservation is at the heart of our growing. Hence why we utilize integrated pest management program. Conservation is at the heart. If we don't care for the soil today, it's not going to be here tomorrow. It's not going to be here tomorrow for our family, our children, if they want to grow, or the next generation. Who knows who that is going to be growing our food? Well, we got to care for today. And if we can't leave it in better condition today than when we started, we're not doing good for our environment or society in general. So we do use crop rotation. We're all no-till. We utilize cover crops on 90% of our fields through the winter. I could go on and on, but I didn't. I was focusing on fruit today, but I'm happy to entertain any questions to that. But yeah, so I'm happy to discuss that more, but we do utilize crop rotation.
I'm going to just say do you grow cherries, and are your crops and fruits sold under a particular brand or just as your own?
Great question. You want to know my most favorite fruit? Sweet cherries. You want to know the fruit we don't grow? Sweet cherries. It's very frustrating. I'm pretty sure that my 2 other brothers and I, it's the 3 of ours most favorite fruit. Like, we get sweet cherries in, and we legit probably can eat like 2 pounds in one sitting a day, like each. It's really ridiculous. We love sweet cherries. We don't grow them. Sweet cherries are a very challenging crop to grow. Harvest started about 2 weeks ago. It's starting to dwindle down here locally. In those 2 weeks, we typically are very busy here managing our peach orchard. We're also typically very busy managing hay and wheat harvest, and we don't have the extra labor to be harvesting cherries. So we've never gone that route to grow them just because of the timing of their harvest. It just doesn't align with our other labor and needs. Additionally, to grow cherries today, you typically want to grow them in a covered, it almost looks like a greenhouse, but it's just a covering across them. They freeze very easily, which we've had scares and had some freezes in the last couple of years, and cherry growers typically get a good crop every 3 years. So you're setting yourself up to manage a large area, and you still need to manage those trees, even if you have a freeze or even if you lose your crop. So you're setting yourself up to have to manage for a crop only every 3 years. And that can be challenging to do. Those high tunnels that those cherry trees are growing in, they protect the trees from that rain that I talked about is very hard on those crops. Rain really injures, really injures a fruit crop. And when cherries get perfectly ripe, you know, they're 2 or 3 days to harvest. What comes after them? The birds. So high tunnels keep those out. And secondly, that rainfall. If you get rainfall right within 2 to 3 days of harvest, those cherries are going to split at the top, and then you've lost it. You've lost your quality. You've lost your shelf day life. What am I looking for? Your shelf time. You know, you can't store that crop for more than 2 or 3 days. So it's very challenging to grow them. So it takes a large sum of money to put those high tunnels up. So if you're going to plant cherry trees, you need to make sure you have a lot of things in line, including that labor source ahead of that. And that's something we're not at. So unfortunately, no cherries, but I will continue to work with those people that have them because I love cherries. Did I answer that question?
Yes.
Sorry if I went overboard there. And did I get it? Is there another question there?
There are 2 more.
Uh-oh, here we go.
So one attendee has several peach trees, and right now the leaves are turning yellow and dropping. Do you know what could cause that? And have you ever experienced it?
Yeah, I can't tell you what it's called, but it's something that actually happens at leaf fall at the end of last year. We do have to spray for it. I can't tell you what. I'm really sorry. Are you able to get my email address later or share that with the guests? I forget if you're doing that or not.
Yep, we will.
Okay. Email me and I'll get what it is. But that actually comes from leaf fall back last fall. So it's something that we have to manage for at the end of last year. We're already managing for it for this year. So just stay back, Alina. They're not going to know we're here. We have a truck coming by. And they're like, oh, wait, there's people. So yeah, so if you email me, I can get you information on that.
Thank you. And our last one, has spotted lanternfly affected your farm?
So not yet. How many of you guys remember stink bugs? Yeah. They're not nearly as miserable as they were as their first onslaught. But we kind of look at stink bugs the same way we look at the spotted lanternfly. They're here. They're in our orchards. We've seen them. When the stink bugs hit, we had eradicated the need of all pesticides for insects in our orchard. We were not spraying our orchard for any pesticides. Only thing we were spraying for was fungicide, which is amazing, and we loved it, and that's where we wanted to be. Stink bugs hit, and we lost about 50% of our crop overnight because of their damage to our fruit. We can maintain and control stink bugs, but only typically with pesticides. We don't have nearly the levels because we've knocked them back, so we don't have nearly the problems because, again, if you take out one generation, you don't get second, third, and fourth generations of an insect. So we are able to monitor and pretty much manage the stink bugs. Spotted lanternflies are the same way. We can manage for them. It's more costly because we do typically have to spray for them, but they're not destroying our orchards like some crops are being destroyed. Vineyards, grapes in our area, very much a concern. They cannot control the damage to those vines as much as we can control it to our orchard. So it is much more devastating to certain crops than it is to our orchard. But we fortunately are able to monitor for it and manage, not in the way we want to, but we're working with a lot of local extension agents on monitoring for it so that they have the data they need to work on controlling it. So more to come there. Yes, if you see them, please still kill them. Don't hear what I'm not saying. We don't want them here. We don't want to see them here. We don't see them moving anywhere farther away. But we're able to manage for them. Good question.
Nice. We did have one more pop up.
Sure.
How many apple trees do you have and how many types?
Sure. So in the last 2 years, we've greatly expanded our apple orchard. Our apple orchard was just about 8 acres. And it really depends on, I can't tell you how many trees completely, In the last 2 years, we planted 10 new acres each. So we're now at 28 acres of apple orchard only. That doesn't include the other crops. But in those new plantings, and remember, I showed you those small dwarf systems where there's a trunk every 4 feet. In those types of settings, we're planting 1,000 trees per acre. So if you're looking at that density, we have about 30-some thousand, more than that. We have about 30-some thousand trees here of apple trees only here on the farm. But again, those bigger trees in Felina pans, you can see we don't have those types of trees there. There's not 1,000 trees per acre on those acres. I'm sorry, I can't tell you how many of those trees are 15, 16, 8 years old now. And I'm sorry, that data has left my mind, but that just gives you an idea of the size. We have another 20 acres of orchard. That is our peaches and our plums and our pears. Also, we are a small orchard comparatively, but we still produce a lot. And our goal is primarily to move most of our product through our farm market and through pick your own experiences, so that we're not actually having to sell to the grocery store or to packing houses or anything like that.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure.
That's all we have now. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. I would say, I know we're soon at probably the 1:30 time, but
1:12.
it's 1:12. Okay, so we got some time. Good. I want to make sure we get to this last area over here, only because I have some questions on your test that if I don't tell you the answer, you're going to get in trouble when you don't know the answer. So I'm going to head over here to that one insect that one of you guys spouted out right away. We said, what's a really important and beneficial insect in the orchard? And that's the honeybee. I'm going to show you that honeybees we have here on the farm, give you a couple stats, and then we'll come back here to the shade or to somewhere else. If you guys have any questions, we'll make sure we cover those before we sign off. Does that sound good? Okay, good. All right, here we go. So unfortunately, we don't have shade, so I don't know if you can block it or not.
No, that's fine.
I won't be out here.
We're doing pretty good.
Okay. So, as you can see, we have hives here on the farm. We have 8 hives here. They live here year round. So these hives are ones that are not rotating from farm to farm or state to state when things coming into bloom. These hives are permanently on here. We don't own them though. We work with a beekeeper. He lives about 20, it's probably about 12 miles from us, but it's like 25-30-minute drive because of traffic, lovely traffic. But those people shop at my market, so we like to have traffic. So anyways, but these hives are owned by a beekeeper, okay? And he actually owns about 200 hives across about 3 or 4 different counties. And the hives here live here year round. He cares for them. He'll step out whenever certain seasons require him to be here. But these honeybees pollinate our orchards. They will work on our tomato crops. They work in our pumpkin patches. You see them heavily out in our sunflowers, actually. One of the things that you really see is really neat is a lot of native bumblebees out in our sunflower fields and in our in our pumpkin patches. Those are really neat crops to see, and the native pollinators out and about. But we love having these honeybees here for a lot of purposes. And part of that is for the educational component, just letting people know why we have them. Of course, everyone knows you get honey from honeybees. We don't think about things like what they're doing. 1 in every 3 bites of food you take is the result of the work of a honeybee, meaning that they pollinated some type of crop that is in the food you're eating. 1 in 3 bites, that's a lot. So when you sit down to dinner tonight or your snack this afternoon, think about your food and think about how a honeybee might have been involved, or a bumblebee, or any other natural or native pollinator might have been involved in the production of your fruit or your vegetables or your food in general. It's really amazing. So these honeybees actually are kind of like live in shelves, and I'm just going to show this here. So each one of those hives kind of looks like this inside. There's different trays, and I wish our beekeeper was here to explain this much more in detail than I am. But these are the different trays, and when you pull them out, and this has kind of had some life on it, you can see there's like the little combs in here, and each of these combs will build up based upon what the honeybees are able to put in here. So they might have baby bees living in these little combs. They might have them filled with pollen. They might have them filled with honey. But these are how they live in there. And when a beekeeper comes, he just sprays some smoke on them, cedar needles, and he sprays, pine needles. What am I saying? Cedar needles. He'll spray some smoke. It confuses them. He's able to open it up. and he can check them out for their health, manage them for anything else, and then also extract the honey as he needs to. So in each hive, and we're going to say one hive is one upright thing, there's probably typically about 10,000 bees per level. So what I say here is this box number 1 has 2 levels. So there's probably about 20,000 bees in there. You can see the third one down here is 3. It's probably about 30,000 bees. And if you come back here in the middle of winter, these hives are all knocked down to just one box or one level, okay? Because again, they're still insects. They have a short lifespan, okay? So they don't have anything to pollinate then. So they let their populations dwindle off. They naturally know that they don't need that many bees at this point in the season. So they will naturally not keep reproducing, okay? So these levels of these, the sizes of these hives will decrease naturally on their own. Now, I say all that to say, what are the 3 types of bees? Honeybees. There's, of course, what would I do with it? There's, of course, the queen bee. There's 1 queen bee in every hive. So we have 8 hives with 8 queen bees on the farm. There is the drone bees, which are the boy bees. Now, in each hive, there might be 20,000 bees in there, but there's only a couple hundred drone bees because their only purpose is to make sure they reproduce and make more honeybees, okay? So they actually never leave the hive. The drone bees always are in the hive. They have no stinger because they don't leave the hive, so they can't sting you. They don't need to protect themselves or each other. So there's no, the drone bees could typically stay inside. The other balance, thousands of other things, are the worker bees, okay? The girl bees, okay? I love sharing this because the girls, on my school tours are always like, wait, what? We're the worker bees, But in reality, the worker bees do a ton of things. The worker bees are the doctors and nurses. They're the ones that are caring for sick or baby bees or mama bees. They're the ones protecting the hives. There's always, it's hard to tell, but some of these bees that are outside these hives right now, their sole job is to guard this hive. And the ones that are flying around our heads right here, they're the guard bees. They're the ones that are like, wait, we should go out and check to see what's going on. What are those things doing around us? They're not going to harm us unless we harm them, but they're going to check out and know for sure what's going on. Additionally, the worker bees are the ones that do go out and do harvest the pollen and the nectar from the blossoms and do bring it back to make the honey. So there's a lot of different jobs in the honeybee world. Now, one thing that I find very, very interesting is to think about how much honey a honeybee makes in its lifetime, okay? So I'm going to do a poll. Can you throw that up there? I'm going to show you my options, okay? So we have a 1 gallon jug, okay? So you think one honeybee makes 1 gallon of honey. So here's a 1 pound container. 1 gallon of honey. You think one honeybee makes a half gallon? Do you think a honeybee makes a pint? Whoop. Or do you think they only make enough to fill 1/12 of a teaspoon? All right. So I'm going to let you put your polls in there, put your answer in your poll.
Have a couple more people. We're looking about 5% say a gallon, 18% say half a gallon, 27% a pint, and 50% 1/12 of a teaspoon.
Yeah, you guys got it. So honeybees can only produce 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in their lifetime. Now, that's not much. When you think about how many of you guys use honey in tea or you're putting it in recipes and you're using at least a teaspoon, it's taking 12 honeybees to fill this teaspoon up, okay? It takes, and I want to get this right, 3,500 honeybees will fly about a total of 55,000 miles to make, you ready for this? 1 pound of honey. All right, 3,500 honeybees will fly 55,000 miles to make enough honey to fill this container. And when I have my beekeeper bring me honey, I'm getting about 300 pounds of honey at a time. So you think about the work that's being done by the honeybees to make sure we not only have honey, but again, every 3 bites of food that you eat is the result of the pollination of a pollinator or a honeybee. It's a lot of work and a lot of things that they're doing. This is just a fun fact. And I don't know if anyone will guess this. I'm not even going to throw it out there. But a bee will flap its wings 11,400 times in 1 minute. 11,400 times. So if you thought that they were buzzing fast, they really, really are buzzing fast, which is kind of neat to see. So, yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, I talked about the life of a honeybee. Honeybees typically live only 1 to 2 months. Okay, so that honeybee, when I say it's going to take, honeybee only fills 1/12 of a teaspoon, it makes sense. They're not living that long. They can't produce that much honey in their lifetime because they're only living 30 to 60 days. A queen bee lives between about 2 to 3 years. And maybe someone here knows more about honeybees than I do, but queen bees do live longer than that. But the typical honeybee is only going to live about 1 to 2 months. So very short lifespan. So I wanted to make sure you guys had those answers before you had to answer any test there. So I think we're getting closer. Should we do any more time for questions? Happy to answer questions. I could go into more detail here, but I don't want to get too long-winded. So
It's 120.
okay.
How far do they fly? How far does a honeybee fly?
Yeah, great question. So a honeybee will fly 800 square miles. Excuse me. 800 square acres. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. I said that wrong. 800 square acres. So an acre is approximately one football field. So they're going to fly 800 squares of football fields to give you an idea of size. So that's a pretty good distance that they'll go. So right now, I like to say that we don't have anything blooming at the farm. We do. We do have stuff blooming. I don't even see it. But these honeybees are flying some great distances to receive or to harvest the nectar and pollen that they're harvesting to make honey. So in some ways, they have it pretty easy when our orchards are in bloom. But right now, they're flying a good distance. We do some buckwheat fields, and the blooms on those, you just see the pollinators in there. Sometimes we put hives out buckwheat fields. We use that as a cover crop, but the bees just love that too. It's just amazing the different things that they'll harvest and what they'll utilize and how far they'll go to do that. And yes, they do harvest. They do yield more than they can eat. Okay, so that's where it comes in that we're extracting that honey off. So we of course always leave enough for them to eat, but we are extracting off the extra honey. And again, think about those different levels of, the number of honeybees in those hives and how they decrease over the certain seasons. So we typically start extracting here sometime around the beginning of July, middle of July, we'll start extracting honey from these hives.
Do we have any other questions? You can go ahead and type them. How many generations are you on the farm?
Sure. So I'm
family?
the fourth generation. My great grandparents, we can come around the corner here, bought this farm in 1950. This was the original farmhouse. It has some Civil War history here because we actually live right along the Susquehanna River, and the bridges was burnt, and the South couldn't get across the North burnt the bridges, and the cavalry camped out here. So we have a little bit of history here, but we bought this in 1950. So we're only 72 years here, 71 years here. So it's neat to see that my great grandparents bought this farm. They never lived here. Their son and daughter-in-law, my grandparents, moved in here originally. My dad was just 6 months old. So he has lived here on the farm. They don't live here. They live in another house on the farm, but he's lived here his whole life, which is pretty cool. My brothers and I, we all live within a half mile of the farm. Some days a half mile is too far. Some days a half mile is too close to the farm. But we're really, really fortunate that we're here. I have 2 children. My one brother has 4 children. We have a dream that they someday want to work the farm too. I like to think like, oh my gosh, what did my parents do? What did my parents do to cultivate this like love for the farm in me? And I don't know what they did, but I do. I have this passion. My brothers and I have this passion. I know for sure my brothers could be doing a lot of other jobs that earn them a lot more money, but they love the farm. They love what they're doing. They love what we're doing for our community. And so I hope that we're able to instill that same passion in, my boys and in my nieces and my nephews, so that someday they're the one on the cameras talking to the next person with that same passion. So hopefully the 5th generation is here at the Flinchbaugh farm. And if it's not, we're looking for anyone that will be wanting and excited to take it over. So we just want to see it continue on someday.
That's super cool. Thank you for sharing.
Elena, do you have any questions? Did you get an education?
I learned a lot.
Yay! Woohoo! Hopefully everyone else there learned something on this journey. And if you share my email address, please reach out to me if you have questions tonight, tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, 2 years from now. I love questions, and hopefully I sparked some ideas or thought thinking as you walk through the orchard with us. And guess what?
So
we have a shade cloud.
yay!
So nice. 55 minutes later, we have shade. We really need to toughen up, don't we, Elena?
Yeah. We need a pool.
Yeah, we do. We do.
We do have one more question. Do you do school tours?
We do school tours, yeah. We do school tours in the spring. We do some summer camps in the summer. Like we have one coming up next week and then one in July. We have scheduled with a couple summer camps. But typically we do 5 tours a day, mid-September through the beginning of November. Pretty well booked. Last year, a little different story. We only had private schools coming out. We didn't have any public schools coming out. So there was that shift. But typically we are very busy, but we do a lot of spring tours too. And what we love is when a school district gets behind us and says, you know what, let's send our kindergartners out in the spring. And when they're first graders, let's bring them back in the fall. And look, they've seen a whole cycle of life at a farm. So they saw those trees as blossoms or very, very immature fruit. And then they're back in the fall picking an apple off that same tree that they looked at was a blossom. And just that cycle of life, that connection that's made. Wow. We love that. We love when that connection's there and that desire to share with people like that.
Very nice. That's awesome. That's a great thing for them.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
so if you have a school and you want to come out, you can schedule on our website. I should say that. It is open. I don't know where you guys are from or what school district you are or where you are across the state, but if you're in the local area, go to flinchbaughsorchard.com. Under the activities, there's something about our school tours there. I'm not listing it correctly in order, but from our website, you can find details about our school tours.
Perfect. We will send that out then too, so people can definitely get that. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us and sharing so much information and your passion. I think this was really helpful for everyone.
Cool. Well, thanks guys for listening in. Always glad to share what we can.